My mother was fighting for her life in a hospital bed, and my brothers decided to pull the plug without even asking me, and the doctor almost went through with it. But none of us expected what my 8-year-old daughter was about to do. I take a breath, remembering the tense moment I stood frozen in that sterile hospital hallway. The hum of fluorescent lights seemed to grow louder as the world around me blurred. Nurses walking briskly, machines beeping in that haunting rhythm that always reminds you you're somewhere between hope and goodbye. I knew my life was changing, but I wasn't ready for what came next. My name is Grace Donovan, and up until that week, I thought I knew my family. I thought I knew what love, trust, and loyalty looked like. I was wrong. My mother, Eleanor Donovan, was the kind of woman who could brighten a room by just entering it. Not because she was loud or bold. She had this calm light about her. She was the quiet strength behind every storm I ever weathered. After raising 3 kids alone when my father died early, she was our anchor. A retired English teacher, she filled our home with books, long talks, and tea at the kitchen counter. Even in her 60s, she journaled every day. Her thoughts, her wishes, her regrets, her hopes. I didn't realize how many secrets she kept, not just about her past, but also plans she had made for her future. Then there's my daughter, Lily. 8 years old, small for her age, with chestnut hair and soft brown eyes that always seemed to be studying the world a little more deeply than most kids her age. Lily adored her grandma. They were kindred spirits who swapped bedtime stories and packed away treasures, wrinkled letters, faded Polaroids, and even family recipes, like little pieces of legacy. I always thought their bond was precious, but what I didn't know was that it was also powerful. Finally, there were my brothers, Michael and Derek, the Donovan boys. Michael, at 40, was the oldest. Successful, serious, always in control. If life were a deal to be negotiated, Michael was the closer. Derek, a couple of years younger, followed in his footsteps. They were both men of facts and practical decisions, never comfortable with things that didn't fit into logic or numbers. To them, vulnerability was weakness. To me, heart was strength, and that was the beginning of the problem. Nothing about that day started dramatically. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I received the call. My mother had collapsed on her front porch. A neighbor saw her fall and dialed 911. I rushed to the hospital with Lily in tow, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. We didn't talk much during the drive. Lily was always observant, and she didn't need to ask questions to understand something was terribly wrong. We arrived to find my brothers already there. They were standing apart from each other in the hallway, arms crossed and faces stiff. When I approached, they barely greeted me. Their eyes were red, but not from crying, from exhaustion, maybe even avoidance. I was the last to know, the last to be told. I remember the moment Michael looked at me and said, "Grace, we need to talk. Come with us." His tone was flat, clipped, authority veiling tension. Before I even reached my mother's room, before I had time to process that she was in a coma, before I could speak a word, Michael dropped the bomb. "The doctors don't think she's going to recover. We've decided to sign the DNR and go ahead with removing life support." Just like that. Like I was being informed of a weather update. As if no one had stopped to think that maybe the daughter who visited every week, who talked to mom about everything from childhood secrets to grocery store coupons, might have something to say about it. I made it clear I wasn't okay with this. I asked, why wasn't I included in this decision? Michael sighed. "Because you're too emotional, Grace," he replied, not looking me in the eye. "Someone has to be realistic." That was when something inside me snapped. In that moment, my heart broke, not just for my mother, but for the realization that my own family had already buried her in their minds, that they had decided I wasn't worthy of being heard because I actually loved her loud enough to hurt. But as I stood there, body tense, words shaking with fury, I had no idea that my voice wouldn't be the one to change everything. It would be my daughter's, the one person in the room who everyone thought was too young to matter. Before the hospital, before the grief, before the betrayal, my life felt predictable, even peaceful in its own way. I'm Grace Donovan, a 36-year-old single mom trying to balance being enough for my daughter while still holding pieces of myself together. It wasn't always easy, but I had a rhythm, And most Sundays, that rhythm brought me back to the quiet, ivy-covered porch of the woman who raised me, my mother, Eleanor Donovan, 62, retired English teacher, lover of chamomile tea and classic literature. She had soft silver hair and a laugh that seemed careless in the best way. If peace had a face, it was her. She lived alone in the same modest house I grew up in, but she never seemed lonely. Her space was filled with plants, handwritten notes, wall shelves of books she'd read 10 times, and fresh flowers from the garden she spent years tending. On her desk, stacks of journals were piled in neat towers, her private conversations with the world. She never remarried after my dad passed away from a car accident when I was 10. Instead, she devoted herself to raising us, me, Michael, and Derek, with everything she had. She taught me how to build a home with love, not money, how to cry when you need to, laugh when you can, and hold tight to those who choose to love you even when you're a mess. That's probably why our Sundays were sacred. Every Sunday morning, I'd pack up my daughter, Lily, and drive to Mom's. Lily loved these weekly rituals even more than I did. She'd skip up the walkway with her backpack bouncing, saying she wanted to be just like Grandma, brave and soft. They were kindred spirits. At 8 years old, Lily was already deeply thoughtful. Too much so, according to some. But Mom always encouraged it. She'd say, "The world needs more people who feel everything." Whenever we arrived, Mom was already sitting in her rocking chair with 2 mugs of tea, one for her, one for me, and warm milk for Lily. She'd ask about Lily's week at school and somehow pulled answers out of her that I couldn't even get. I'd watch them talk, laugh, and share inside jokes, and it felt like watching time fold in on itself, the past holding hands with the future. In many ways, Eleanor was also my refuge. As a single mom, I was juggling work at an understaffed community center, paying bills that always felt like they were one paycheck ahead of me, and trying to be both fun and firm for Lily. But every Sunday, that load got lighter. Mom made me feel like I hadn't messed everything up. Like even if life was messy, love could still be clear. And as close as we were, there was always something a little mysterious about her too. There were moments when she'd pause in the middle of a sentence, looking like she was holding back a truth she wasn't ready to share. I could tell she'd been planning, arranging, thinking, preparing something I didn't yet understand. But I trusted her. She was steady. As for my brothers, they were not part of this ritual. Michael, the oldest, hadn't visited in months. He lived 2 states away in a pristine home with quartz countertops and a wife who didn't care for mess, emotional or otherwise. He was the successful one, at least to most of the world. Big company job, nice suits, a life built on sound decisions and no-nonsense principles. Then there was Derek, quieter but just as distant. He ran his own contracting business, lived in the same town, but only showed up on major holidays or when Mom needed something heavy moved. He loved her, I won't deny that, but he loved control more, and being emotionally available less. Mom never complained about it. She always said, people give what they can, when they can. But I knew she wished they were around more. One particular Sunday, I noticed Mom was quieter than usual. She let Lily lead the conversation, her eyes lingering on her granddaughter like she was absorbing every detail. When Lily went off to play in the garden, Mom put her hand gently over mine and said, "Promise me one thing, Grace. No matter what happens, don't let them talk over you." I didn't know what she meant at the time. I thought she was just being protective. But now I realize she was warning me. And she must have known something I didn't, because everything changed in the span of a single phone call. It was a Tuesday when the world shifted. I was making lunch for Lily, sunflower butter sandwiches cut into little hearts, her favorite, when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice wasn't. "Is this Grace Donovan?" The tone was urgent, clinical. "Yes, it is. This is County General Hospital. Your mother, Eleanor Donovan, was brought in by ambulance. She suffered what appears to be a severe stroke. We need you to come immediately." My hands went numb. The knife I was holding clattered on the counter, and Lily looked up from her drawing with worry in her eyes. I didn't even get to respond to the nurse. I just told Lily to grab her shoes, and we were out the door. The drive to the hospital felt like floating through molasses. Everything slowed down but somehow rushed at the same time. Lily sat silent in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her knees pulled to her chest. By the time we arrived, my brothers were already there. They stood in a corner of the waiting room, speaking in low tones. They didn't see me at first. Or maybe they did. They just didn't come over. I asked the nearest nurse about Mom. The look in her eyes told me everything before she even spoke. She's stable, but she's in a coma. The stroke caused significant damage. The doctors are evaluating, but it's critical. Her words lodged in my chest like a sentence I hadn't learned to process. Coma. Damage. Critical. I knew each word, but not together. Not in a sentence about my mother. I headed down the hallway toward her room. I don't remember touching the door, but suddenly I was inside. The sight knocked the air out of me. Mom lay still. Too still. Her vibrant personality was drowned out by machines and tubes and the quiet beep of monitors. I took her hand. It was warm, but lifeless. I whispered, "Mom, I'm here. I'm not leaving. I love you." Lily slid into the room behind me and climbed up onto the chair beside her. She placed her rabbit next to Grandma's hand and stared. "She looks like she's sleeping," Lily whispered. "I know, sweetie." That's when I heard the footsteps behind us. Michael and Derek entered without saying a word. Michael's jaw was clenched. Derek rubbed his temples like he was already exhausted by the situation. I stood up to face them. "We need to talk," Michael said sharply. I hesitated but followed them back to the hall. They moved with a kind of tight urgency, like they had already decided something and were waiting for me to catch up. Michael spoke first. "The doctors say there's very little brain activity. She's not likely to recover. They called us into the consultation room before you arrived. So they spoke to you before I got here." My voice shook with anger. "You got here as soon as you could. It's okay," Derek offered, as if that excused everything. I felt my blood run cold. "You're making decisions without me?" Michael threw his hands up. "Grace, we don't have time for emotional debates. We have to be realistic about this. Mom wouldn't want to live like this. We all know that." "No," I snapped back. "We don't all know that. You don't get to speak for her like you're the only one who mattered." He stared at me, unblinking. "You're too emotional for this, Grace. You always have been." There it was. The dismissal. The same words that had followed me since childhood. Too sensitive, too soft, too much. Derek backed him up. "We signed the paperwork. We're withdrawing life support tomorrow morning." I think I stopped breathing for a moment. "You what?" "It's better this way," Michael continued. "The doctor agrees." "I don't agree," I said through clenched teeth, "and you had no right to do this without including me. None." Michael scoffed. "Grace, we tried calling you." "No," I said, stepping toward him. "You called me to inform me, not to include me." Silence hung in the air. Heavy. Loaded. Then Lily stepped into the hallway, surprisingly calm. "Mom," she asked softly, "can we go back in and sit with Grandma?" I nodded slowly and followed her back into the room, leaving my brothers behind. I didn't have a plan. I just had a truth vibrating in my bones. They had crossed a line. They were wrong, and I was not going to let them do this. I sat beside my mother, holding her hand. Lily leaned her head against my arm. "Grandma always said love is stronger than anything," Lily murmured. "Yeah," I replied. "She did." In that moment, the conflict sharpened into clarity. They might see me as emotional, but I wasn't weak, and this wasn't over. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of machines. I sat in the uncomfortable vinyl chair next to my mother's bed, her hand in mine, willing warmth into fingers that no longer squeezed back. I knew the doctors had their charts, their scans, and their facts, but none of that changed the truth I felt in my chest. My mother wasn't gone. She was here, somewhere beneath the silence. I felt it like a tug I couldn't ignore. Lily sat on the floor beside Grandma's bed, her little legs crossed, her hand resting gingerly over Eleanor's. She quietly hummed a tune her grandmother had taught her, a lullaby my mother used to sing to me. The innocence of it softened the room, wrapping us like a blanket of memory and love. "Mom," Lily whispered without looking up, "do you think Grandma can hear us?" "I don't know, sweetheart," I said honestly, "but I hope so." Lily nodded. Then, as if remembering something important, she reached into her backpack. She rummaged through colored pencils, a sticker book, her rabbit, until she pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper, something I'd seen before but not paid attention to. "What's that?" I asked gently. Lily looked at me with big, serious eyes that didn't match her small frame. "Grandma gave me this. Last year," she said quietly. "She said to keep it safe until I needed it." I took it from her hand, confused. The paper was folded with care, sealed with a small heart sticker. I opened it slowly, assuming it was one of Mom's notes, maybe a recipe or a quote she loved. But it wasn't a recipe. It wasn't a quote. It was a legal document, a notarized one. My eyes widened. "Is this medical power of attorney?" I whispered. Lily nodded. "Grandma said I was brave, like you. She said it was for both of us." Stunned, I scanned the page again. The document was clear. Eleanor Donovan had legally granted her granddaughter, Lily, power of attorney for medical decisions. And since Lily was only 8, I was listed as her legal representative. Not Michael, not Derek. Me. A million questions flashed through my mind. Why had Mom chosen Lily? Why hadn't she told me? How long had she been planning this? But the most important question was, what now? Just then the door creaked open, and in walked Michael, hands in his pockets, shoulders leaned back in a defensive posture. "We're meeting with the doctor in an hour," he announced flatly. "They'll withdraw life support tomorrow. Just thought you should know." I stared at him, the document shaking in my hand. He didn't notice it. He didn't care to. He waited for me to respond, as if I'd finally accept his decision. But it wasn't up to him. Not anymore. "I'm not agreeing to that," I said with steady conviction. "And neither is Mom." Michael rolled his eyes. "Grace, stop. You're dragging this out. She made her wishes clear years ago. She never wanted to live like this." "No," I replied sharply. "You decided that for her." His voice hardened. "Listen, this isn't a movie. There's no miracle coming. We're not children. It's time to be adults." At that, Lily stood up. She walked over slowly and took my hand. "Mom?" she said, her voice oddly calm. Grandma trusted me. With Lily's small fingers intertwined in mine, I suddenly understood. Mom hadn't given Lily that responsibility by accident. She chose Lily because she trusted her heart, just like she trusted mine. She knew my brothers would try to bulldoze all emotion out of the situation, and she prepared for it. That realization lit a fire in me. "I'm going to stop this," I told Lily softly, kneeling to her level. "But I need to know if you're ready to help me." Lily didn't hesitate. "I'm ready." I hugged her tightly. Together we walked out of that room, heartbeats synchronized in a mix of fear and resolve. Before the meeting with the doctor, we sat in the waiting room where Derek was scrolling on his phone and Michael paced the floor. They looked up as we entered, eyes weary, oblivious to the shift that had already happened. "Grace," Michael sighed, "let's just get through this." I met his stare and calmly laid the document on the table between us. "What's this?" he asked, picking it up casually, and then the blood drained from his face. "It's Mom's power of attorney," I said quietly, my hand on Lily's shoulder. "And she didn't give it to you." For the first time since the stroke, Michael was speechless. I wasn't. The decision had been made. We were going to fight, and we had the law on our side. The meeting with the doctor was scheduled for 3 p.m. My brothers took their usual places at the table, Michael on one side, Derek on the other, both trying to project calm decisiveness. But I saw it. The flicker of unease in Michael's jaw, the way Derek's foot bounced under the table. They weren't as in control as they'd thought. Lily stood beside me, clutching the folded legal document, her small knuckles white around its edges. I placed my hand gently over hers. She looked up at me, and without saying a word, we reminded each other why we were here. The doctor, a middle-aged man with silvering hair and kind but tired eyes, stepped into the room. He took his seat and opened a chart. Michael leaned forward, ready to begin. "Dr. Myers," he said confidently, "I think we're all in agreement about the course of action." The doctor nodded. "Yes, based on the medical facts, we are prepared to proceed with withdrawal of life support tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As he spoke those words, I felt my body tense. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I wanted to scream, to leap across the table and tear the plan to pieces. But I didn't, because it wasn't my voice that needed to speak just yet. Lily stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Dr. Myers?" The doctor paused mid-sentence. We all turned to look at her. "Yes?" Lily slid the paper across the table toward him, just as she had practiced. "My grandma gave me this. It means she picked me to make medical decisions for her." The doctor took the form, brows knitting closer together as he read. First once, then again slower. He leaned back in his chair. "This is a legal document," he said carefully. "It designates—" He looked at Lily. "You, as Eleanor's medical power of attorney, with your mother as secondary guardian." Michael stood up abruptly, palms flat on the table. "This is ridiculous. She's a child. That can't be real." "It's notarized," the doctor said calmly. "It's legally binding. A minor can hold this power under guardianship." Derek's face went pale. "Mom, gave that to a kid? Why didn't she tell us?" I met his stare. "Because she knew you wouldn't listen. She trusted the only person in this family who still believes love matters more than control." The doctor placed the document back on the table, his expression unreadable but attentive. "Legally, we can't proceed with any decisions unless Grace and Lily consent, which they clearly do not." For a moment, the room was silent. No voices, no machines, just tension thick enough to reach out and hold. Then Michael snapped. "You've let your feelings run wild, Grace," he hissed. "You're acting like you're in one of your romantic daydreams." "No," I said slowly, carefully. "I'm acting like someone who actually knows Mom, who listened to her, who saw her as a person, not a burden to clean up after." Michael's jaw tightened, and he looked at Lily like she was a threat. "And you don't know what you're doing." Lily didn't flinch. "Grandma said love isn't weakness," she said. "Love is strength with a heartbeat." Those words sank deep. Derek swallowed hard. "Grace, is this really what you think she'd want?" "It's what she planned for," I replied. "She made her choice. We just have to honor it." The doctor cleared his throat and stood. "Given the legal change, we will not withdraw life support tomorrow. Eleanor will remain under care until further notice." He gathered his files, nodded respectfully at Lily, and left the room. I exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. Michael turned away, defeated. Derek sank into his chair, hands covering his face. And Lily. Lily walked quietly over to me and hugged me. "We did it," she said softly. I held her tight, thinking of all the times I doubted my own strength, all the moments I felt dismissed, unseen, all the times I felt small. And here was my daughter, her courage saving the woman we both loved. That night, as the hospital quieted and visiting hours ticked past, I sat by Eleanor's bed. I held her hand just like before. But this time, it wasn't desperation that filled me. It was hope. Hope that she'd hear every word Lily had spoken. Hope that she knew her voice had never been lost. And then, just as a tear slipped down my cheek, her fingers twitched. I always thought the word after meant that something was finished, complete behind us. But sometimes, after is just the beginning of a different version of life, a quieter one, a less certain one, but one that still carries love, even through the cracks. Eleanor didn't wake up overnight. There was no miracle moment where she sat up, spoke fluently, and remembered everything. Real life is never that clean. But 2 days after the meeting with the doctor, something changed. Her hand moved, just a twitch. Then her eyelids fluttered. When I leaned in close and whispered, "Mom, it's Grace. I'm here. We're here." I felt her fingers squeeze mine. It was small, but it was enough. The doctors called it a sign of neurological response. I called it proof that she hadn't left us. Not yet. They transferred her to a long-term care facility where her body could rest and her mind could fight in its own time. There's no guarantee of full recovery. Maybe there never will be. But she's still here, and she's not alone. Michael and Derek stopped visiting as often, not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how to face what had happened. The guilt of what they tried to do without me weighed on them like a shadow they carried. One afternoon, months later, Derek showed up at the facility with a box of Mom's old journals. He placed them gently beside her bed, like an apology he couldn't finish saying aloud. Michael's apology came in the form of silence, a strained hug, a quiet, "You were right," before he went back to his life across state lines. My relationship with them didn't magically heal, but it changed. Maybe that's all we can ask. I learned that sometimes doing the right thing means letting go of what you wish people would give you and accepting what they can. I stopped trying to force my brothers into the role of men they weren't wired to be, and I stopped letting their labels define me. Too emotional. What a laughable thing to use as punishment against someone who loved. My heart had always been my compass, not my curse, and I realized I wasn't the only one who inherited that from Mom. Lily became a light in the small, private world of that care facility. The nurses adored her. She brought drawings, read stories, and played music on a little Bluetooth speaker for Grandma. "She might not be awake, but she can hear love," Lily said once, matter of fact. I'm not sure where she learned that. Maybe she never needed to. One Sunday, not long after it all happened, Lily and I visited Mom together, like we always used to. But this time, I brought one of the journals Derek had returned. Inside, I found an entry written just a few months before Mom's stroke. In her careful cursive, she wrote, "I worry that my children don't see the same world I do. They think feelings make them weak, but feelings, real, raw feelings, are what make us human. Grace has that. Lily too. I trust them." Beneath that, in smaller handwriting, "And when I'm gone, I hope they learn that the smallest voice, speaking from truth, can turn every tide." I closed the journal and looked at Lily, sitting beside her grandmother, braiding a daisy chain with focus and calm. That's when I understood what this journey was really about. It wasn't about life support or legal papers or power struggles. It was a story about inheritance, about what we pass down that can't be buried by time or bound inside a will. Eleanor gave us more than Sunday tea and bedtime stories. She gave us courage. She gave us voice. And through Lily, she gave that voice a second life. When I think back on those days, the phone call, the hallway fights, the silence before Lily spoke, I don't feel rage anymore. I feel gratitude. Gratitude that love makes us messy. That emotion is a power, not a flaw. That sometimes the one who saves us isn't the strongest or oldest or loudest, but the one who listens closest to their heart. Maybe my mother won't ever say those words aloud again, but she already said them once. In the life she chose to live, in the child she chose to raise, in the granddaughter she chose to trust, and that is how I know love never leaves. It simply shifts into new hands, hands like Lily's, hands like mine, hands that still hold on, even when everyone else lets go. If this story touched you in any way, if it made you think of someone you love or reminded you what it means to fight for what's right, I hope you'll carry it with you. And I hope it inspires you to listen a little closer to your heart, to your family, and especially to those quiet voices in your life. You never know who might be speaking the truth you need to hear. Pause. Allow gentle, emotional reflection. This wasn't just a story about losing control or facing hard decisions. It was a reminder that love, real love, doesn't back down. It stands up, even when it shakes, even when it hurts, even when it comes from someone you least expect. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you felt this story in your heart, I'd love for you to help it reach more people. Hit like if this story meant something to you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever felt unheard by your own family? What did you do? And if you want more true life stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Soft fade out with channel name, brand logo, and music trailing off. Until next time, stay true, stay brave, and stay kind.